Welcome to SEGA Talk. Today we're diving into the high-octane world of Border Break. We'll explore the epic battles, customizable robots, and the passionate community behind the beloved game. Join us as we revisit the legacy of this mostly overlooked SEGA AM2 classic.
SegaBits presents SEGA Talk, a podcast talking all things SEGA! With your hosts, George and Barry.
Look, it's a giant talking egg. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the master here. So what?
Hello and welcome to this robotic, gasoline-driven episode of SEGA Talk. I'm your audible frame, George, and with me, like always, is my co-host Gunner, Barry.
Hey, everybody.
And as you can see, Barry is very into McDonald's, and you're working
right.
at McDonald's, or what's going on here? What's the getup?
No, I'm working McDonald's. So, the Sonic 3 Happy Meal toys have been announced. They're coming end of December. You know me, George. I'm a Sonic 3 Happy Meal guy, and I don't think ever in history has there been two Sonic 3s and they both had a Happy Meal.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Barry's always been a Sonic 3 McDonald's guy. Everyone knows this.
Everyone knows this.
It was your middle name for a while, the Sonic 3 McDonald's Happy Meal guy.
It is my middle name. I've changed it. But, I mean, I don't know if people are paying attention, but there's a lot of influencers and YouTubers out there getting these, like, free goodies. They sent out Genesis cartridges that actually tell people when the trailer is happening.
Oh, really?
And we didn't get this, George, but I'm not mad. I'm just showing my support for McDonald's and the Sonic 3 brand. So I'm hoping that, doing something like this, that by the end of December they'll send out, like, I'm at least hoping, like, for like a gold crate filled with a whole set of Sonic Happy Meal toys, maybe like a lifetime supply of Happy Meals. And
wow, that's a lot of Happy Meals.
That's not a lot to ask for, right? I just want eternal happiness.
And we can only say positive things about McDonald's. They have protein-based. I don't know if they're healthy. They have food there. Yeah, they're great, and they have
a
lettuce,
$5
vegetables.
They have a $5 meal deal going on. So, unfortunately, I'm going to have to wear the hat and hold this mug for the next, I don't know how long this episode's going to be. So if you could keep it short, that would be great. Maybe, could you see, so here.
We'll just CGI the cup into your hand.
Yeah. So I'll have it here, and then I'm going to put it down, and I'm really hoping in post that you kind of map this out and just kind of give it like a little shake, or maybe just loop this part. And the hat, too. If you could, like, CG the hat on.
Yeah. We'll do it post.
Okay, thank you.
So, tell the fine folks at home more about Patreon now that we finished sponsoring McDonald's.
So, if you check us out at patreon.com/SegaBits and you support us, then I won't have to resort to these sorts of things. But yeah, we have a variety of tiers. $1 gets you in the door. You get the audio show about 2 weeks early. We have extended the lead time. So basically, when this episode goes out, the previous episode will go to the public. So you are going to be getting some quality content much earlier. If you support us at the $5 level, you get the video version 2 weeks early, and then if you go up from there, we have our, I guess we call it like a producer level. I call it a picker level. It has a different name. You can check it out. But that lets you tell us what to cover. And this episode, George, was this a Patreon pick?
I would say so, because who picked Border Break? I think we're the only people that talked about it. Because when I did some extensive research, I was like reading my own articles randomly. I'm like, wait, I did this article. So, and people like you get to pick episodes like Border Breaks. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I did we have a pretty good research into this games, considering it's a Japanese only game. It's actually kind of hard to find a lot of info on this game because it's mostly arcade. It's almost like there's like this Shining Force game that's like a dungeon crawler that I really like the way it looks. Can't really find any info on that. This has more info, thankfully. So let's talk about the game. So Border Break is a third-person mecha action arcade game developed and published by SEGA AM2. It was released all the way back in September 11, 2009. It was the first title to run on Sega's Ring Edge arcade system board. The game features intense 10 versus 10 multiplayer robot battles across various landscapes, combining elements of Western PC shooters with Japanese mech aesthetics. So, what is your history with Border Break? What do you remember leading up to its release? And what are your thoughts on Sega AM2 doing a mech action game?
My memories of it are that this was one of those games that was covered before Sega Bits was a thing.
Right.
So this was something that was news most likely on Sega Nerds. And I'm sure you and the team over there covered it. And I just remember hearing about it and being like, oh, cool, AM2 game. I'm sure this will get a home release. And it never did.
It's weird because I feel like everything they've done has gotten some sort of home release in some form. Mostly everything.
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as memories, I remember reading about it. I remember being excited for it. And then patiently waiting for about 15 years now for it to release to consoles, and it never has. So, whoops.
There's a PS4 version, but it was like, and it might have skipped you because I know you didn't buy into the PS4 ecosystem. I think you were an Xbox One gamer. But there was a PS4, but only Japan, and never came out here. And the instructions were all Japanese because I remember having to do the whole making a Japanese PSN account and jumping through hoops to get it. But I will say about the game, this is the first time they've made a mech shooter game, AM2. I know that Virtual On was a AM3 game. And so it's interesting for them to make a team-based game because the last time I remember Sega AM2 trying a team-based game, it was Out Trigger. And was that really a team-based game? I'm trying to remember. It's more like running gun type game.
Yeah, it's like a third-person shooter.
Not team-based, really.
Arena shooter. Yeah.
So this is the first time they've done this, and I think this is the last time they made their own IP or worked on their own IP, because after this, they basically made like Hatsune Miku games. So this is a pretty important release for them as a independent studio, I guess, or independent as they make their own content and not base it on a license. So that's a pretty big deal, I think, for this game, and kind of closed a chapter in Sega AM2's history. And so let's get a little bit into the history of development of the game. So the development behind Border Break consisted of veterans who worked on gun shooting games like Virtual Cop, which we did an episode on Sega Talk 141. You can see it up on here, and you can click and watch it. And Ghost Squad. Their goal was to create a party-style game where everyone could play together, ultimately deciding on a robot shooting concept. The team's primary goal was to create, obviously, to bring everyone together, a party-style game. So what do you think about the party-style game? Do you usually think of mech games as party-style games? Because, to me, I think of, overcomplicated stuff.
Yeah, no, whenever I think of mech games, I think, man, I wish I had the patience for those, because often it's just it's either incredibly deep, like Steel Battalion or something, or actually, it's surprisingly light, like Virtual On. But to be honest, I don't know, a mech's, as soon as I see that AM2 on there, I'm not expecting something that's going to be too deep. But was it a deep game?
So, and we'll get into it. They had a lot of content updates, but to me, from what I've read and mostly seen online, it felt like it was cosmetics or bringing in more maps, and they did have a competitive scene. Like if you go online and go to Border Break Esports, there was actually like tournaments they would live stream for 6 hours a day where people played professionally and they had like a cup. But it felt to me more like a mobile game. So it's funny that they say party style. But I guess I would say it's like Smash maybe in a way where it's like, yeah, there's a competitive scene for it, but people consider it a party game. Like I'm sure there's people that play Mario Kart competitively, so that's usually an interesting. And I agree with you. Usually when I think of mech games, I think of those like really big controllers you have to buy specially made for them, where they have like a gazillion buttons and you have to like slowly go and think of your path and stuff. So that's why I was surprised that they would think of party game mechs. Of course, everyone thinks of mechs as party games, but maybe it's a Japanese thing with Gundam and all the popularity over there.
Yeah, I have to wonder, like, I feel like Japanese style games like that, they make those really deep mech games, and the target are people where they're like, these players are going to make this their lifestyle. These aren't going to be people who play any other games except for this game, and they are going to be hyper committed, mostly playing this. I mean, and then on the flip side, you see those really light fighting games or mech fighting games where it's like, obviously no one's going to turn this into their whole like existence. And because the game is so light, like, I don't know, like I take surveys from Sega sometimes and they'll be like, what games do you regularly play? And I'm like ticking all these boxes, but I'm skipping the ones where it's like, I don't regularly play PSO2, but I'm sure there's someone who took that survey and they only ticked the PSO2 box. Fortnite, and that's their thing. I don't know.
And so during development, the team grew significant inspiration by popular Western PC shooters of the time. Two of the games in particular that were mentioned were Counter-Strike and Battlefield. These games were reportedly played extensively by the development team during Border Break's creation. And do you have any history with online games on PC such as Counter-Strike and Battlefield?
No, I actually don't. I think my only real experience is like playing Dreamcast ports of games that were really big on PC at the time. I think Rainbow Six had a release. I think, did Counter-Strike have a Dreamcast release?
I think it had like a... Maybe, yes. I'm trying to remember if it... Maybe it was just the Half-Life 2 multiplayer or Team Fortress. I'm not sure. It was one of those. But I think there was one ported or released by a third party. I'm not sure. Because it obviously didn't come out officially, but... Right. I remember Counter-Strike because it used to be installed at school in the computer lab. So that one's one that I remember because before that I never played it. And they're like, let's play this one game. And obviously the kids that had computers at their home were like super good at it and they would just beat everyone. And Battlefield, one of my friends was into it growing up, like super hardcore into it, where he like drew the maps and tried to memorize every corner and like every aspect to it and like was talking about doing it professionally. I think everyone in their lives has that moment where they're like, I'm going to become a professional gamer. How great would that be? But yeah. So creating Border Break presented several challenges for the team. Obviously, genre innovation. A third-person shooter is actually not common in Japan at the time. So trying to make this a arcade-style game, especially when it was influenced by Western PC games, is kind of hard. And having a new IP in a competitive space that basically is almost now nostalgia-driven at this point, the arcades. So that's two things that were challenging for them. And do you think that Sega missed a big chance on reviving this something like Virtualon instead of making a brand new name and franchise like Border Break?
Yeah, it's difficult because from what I see, a lot of the games like this that they try to make popular in Japan, they tie them to like anime characters. Like either the girls, it's usually girls like inside the machines.
This game is like that too. So yeah.
It is. Okay. Yeah, where they'll pop up on screen. But yeah, even Virtualon tried to do that. Remember, what was it? A certain magical Virtualon?
Yeah, it was like a crossover with an anime.
Yeah, and I actually found the demo that I downloaded to my PS4. It's still there, and I was like, man, this was a weird direction to take the Virtualon franchise. But I think Sega's just been kind of like really struggling to have a success here, and I don't know, maybe it's strange because Virtualon has been tied to Japan, even though over here I feel like there's a big fan base and they just ignore it.
Yeah, it is strange, and it's also like, I guess the only thing I could say that the reason they would like separate it is because it was made by a different studio, Sega AM3, and this is a multiplayer team-based shooter, and they probably didn't want people to think it's a one-on-one Virtual-on type fighting game.
Right.
So, but I think they could always just made it like a side game, like call it something totally different, Virtual-on, TVT War, 10 versus 10 War or something. People would have been fine with it. So let's look at the arcade cabinet for the game. As you can see right here, we got it's a neon green cabinet, nothing special. And I think the 2000s, late 2000s especially, where it was basically repurposing other arcades to make these games come out quicker. So the cabinet's fine. It looks nice. As you can see when you look at the controls on the second picture, it has a mouse and keyboard arcade style stick, so it has its own unique control system. What do you think about that? Does that seem party friendly, family friendly?
I mean, maybe not, but I think it is PC friendly for those that you know, have that background. I actually really think I like the controls. I think they look really attractive, and like I kind of have a thing for arcade machines that I've never seen before. Like sometimes these sorts of control schemes end up being super intuitive and fun.
Right.
But yeah, I dig it, but I can't see this being like all ages party game friendly at all.
Yeah, and it's funny that they chose Battlefield and Counter-Strike as the games that they're inspired by, which I think both of them are considered, like, one's considered the hardcore Call of Duty game and the other one's considered the hardcore esports game. So interesting ones to focus on. So the storyline for the game. Obviously, it's a Sega AM2, so it doesn't have a deep narrative storyline, and it focuses more on, obviously, the team-based combat. The game setting is a future where giant robots, known as orbital frames, are used for various purposes, including military and peacekeeping operations. The game's story primarily unfolds through the player's progression and interactions with different factions and characters. So, are we really surprised that a Sega AM2 game has literally no lore, no actual surface level like talking points story wise? Like, we're not going to be doing I don't know, deep dive Fallout 100-hour videos breaking down Sega AM2 lore. So
yeah, no, that doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, I with the news of Virtua Fighter 5 coming to PC with that Revo version, I went back and was playing Ultimate Showdown on PS4, and I was like, man, I would kill for just a little bit of cutscene, even though I know all the characters' like relationships and I know why Dural like appears at the end. The game makes no attempt to tell me why. It's just like, yeah, well, we've been doing that since Virtua Fighter 1. If you haven't been paying attention, then too bad. You know, it's like...
Get the manual and read the background, basically, because most of the stories...
Well, now,
yeah,
in these days, the digital games, it's like scan the QR code, visit the website, and hope that they still kept the PDF, you know, hosted for the manual. It's just like, man...
And what do you think about that? Since this game was kind of updated for, I think it was 14 years. I would say that now technically Virtua Fighter 5 is the longest supported Sega AM2 arcade game since, like, what is it, 2006 to now?
Yeah,
there's going to be one.
You'd be correct.
So that's crazy. But yeah, this game was almost the longest if it wasn't for obviously the beautiful Virtua Fighter 5. So let's
Right.
look at some of the gameplay here in the background while I talk a little bit about the gameplay. So Border Break's gameplay is a unique blend of mech action and team-based shooter elements. Includes 10 to 10 battles like we talked about in cities, towns, and facilities, with the objective of each team to destroy the opposing team's energy reactor core, which is marked blue or red depending on what side of the team you are. And players could pick different customizable classes, including Assault, which is obviously like a gunner type, automatic weapons, grenades, and swords, medium range combat. Heavy, which is obviously like a tank character. Sniper, which you take the back row. And support, which is more healing your teammates and playing the supportive role. Players can customize their blast runners, which are the mechs, with different parts and color schemes, creating a unique look and feel. So, when you play team-based games like online RPGs like Phantasy Star Online, what role or class do you usually play?
I usually play like the more nimble, like the ones that don't have the biggest health bar, but they are a lot faster on the field and are typically long range. That's me.
I actually do prefer long range, usually like bow and arrows or something, depending on what. Usually if I
Right.
play like a D&D game, I'm always like a sniper or a bow and arrow person, so I actually feel you on that one. And I think Assault or the frontline characters, like the hunter characters, are kind of fine to play if you're going to play mostly by yourself. It's in Phantasy Star, at least, I would play the the basic class because it was easier. Because it was hard to play a healing character by yourself.
Oh, that's what I never got. Like in Phantasy Star, especially Phantasy Star Online, like the healing character, yeah, you're great in a team environment, but man, I tried creating one and just like trying some offline play, and I was like, this is so damn boring. Like I'm casting spells, I'm not getting into combat and hitting things with like, you know, sabers and stuff. That's why I stuck with the Huna Whirl, which was the female like fighter hunter, and then the human in the art he's like blue armor with yellow hair, which is the like the long range weapons, and everyone loved those guys on their teams. Like,
Right.
I don't know. It's just like if you get good enough, you can cast spells. But yeah, in the case of this game, like I would probably opt for something faster. I've never been a fan of the big tank characters that have like an insane amount of health but are just so boring to play as. That even extends to like Jet Set Radio. I think Combo is just a bore to play as.
And one thing I've noticed about Border Break a lot, and you can see it in this gameplay footage, they say cities and stuff, but I've mostly seen like desert planets, like barren, like dirt. And that's one thing that I don't really like about the game and what it looks like. And like you said, the speed is really slow. It feels like it's 50% the speed of Virtual On. Maybe I'm thinking of Virtual On with rose-tinted glasses. But it just feels a lot faster when last time I played it. So
you know, it looks a lot like Gun Valkyrie 2, which is a game that I think had a lot of potential and is just kind of ugly to look at, boring.
Right. So
Yeah.
I was going to say about the mechanics. The game you control the game with a joystick and mouse for aiming. So the mouse is for aiming, and your joystick is to move your character. Blast runners have distinct weight and utilize a boost dash mechanic, setting them apart from typical shooting games. Players can walk or dash and jump, and those use energy. So if you crouch, you preserve your energy. So there's moments where you want to not move around too much, so you could regain more energy. Combat involves using various weapons and obviously reloading. So I mean, we know that. There's player controls where you could obviously single your teammates where to go, so you could control it. Matches are usually in a 10-minute timer that inspires, or if one team destroys the reactor core of the other one. The team with more core gauge wins if the time runs out. So, kind of obvious. It's very King of the Hill type of gameplay. Like, you either defend or you attack, and you have to figure out who.
Oh.
So,
I thought you were thinking like propane accessories.
No, I wish. I
King of the
wish.
Hill.
And I'm happy
Yeah.
because they're bringing that show back, which makes me pretty happy.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, yeah. Communication and teamwork. Players can be, issue commands and point to specific areas. Commands could be defending position, capturing spawn points, and requesting assistance. And there's a touch screen on the arcade game that you could use for this. And there's obviously a progression system where you could earn class points at the end of each match. And just that when you start the game, you start off with AIs, which I don't know how I feel about that, because sometimes I give up on some of these online games where they're like, oh, you have to do 10 matches with AI bots so you can understand the game. I'm like, no, I'm good. I'd rather go play a single player game. I'm not playing 10 matches with bots, man.
Right.
That's boring. And it's always the most dead brain bots they always put out there. But anyway, so yeah, what do you think about the gameplay that you're watching on the screen right now? You can see the little anime girls here, and so it's like this. To me, sometimes it's jarring where you're like, it's a fully 3D Meg game, and then randomly this little like 2D anime girl pops up and starts talking, and you're like, what? It just feels like they just added them last minute. It's almost like you're watching a VTuber talk sometimes.
Right, yeah, and I think that the 2D anime character with the graphics that just don't even match are a thing in Japan that's like completely normal to them. It never has translated well over to the West, I don't think. Because you don't see those physical characters in the game. Which is why it feels like they've just been slapped on the UI. It is interesting though, because it is very like Virtual on Phantasy Star Online, in terms of the gameplay. And I'm looking at the comments too, and people are like arguing. 6 years ago they were arguing. This one person at the top of the comment says, why do people keep saying this is Virtual On's successor? There's no locking on and boosting around in the small area while shooting off weapons with infinite ammunition. If anything, this seems like Sega's attempt at making something along the lines of a smaller scale Mobile Suit Gundam Online.
I would actually kind of agree with that, because I think that's one of in the notes it says that Gundam was one of the brands they had to compete against.
Right. But I mean, you see that comparison made a lot. Like people say, oh, Yakuza is the successor to Shenmue, and it's like, it really isn't. It's a very different game. But I can understand why, if you're just looking within Sega itself, you could look at this and go, yeah, it's like the successor to Virtual On, which is kind of funny because I think Virtual On had a game after this, so it's really not the successor.
No. I would say it's like one of those on the surface mech and fighting and blasting, and you're like, oh, yeah, it makes sense. Like if you just saw like a 15-second gameplay footage of Shenmue and of Yakuza next to each other, you would say that they're obviously the same team. But when you look deeper into the gameplay, you're like, no, this ain't it.
100%, yeah.
So let's look at I have an image here, the third image. It shows you all the releases for the arcade version. This was posted on a beautiful website called SEGA Retro. I don't know if you've heard of it. They're our sister site. Beautiful people over there working tirelessly to catalog everything Sega. Here they have the arcade version showing you that, it came out in 2009. The official, the last end of service was on the 2019, so it lasted 10 years in arcades.
Wow.
But as you could tell, in 2017, it was really the last update, version 5, which was called X0 Plus. And I was going to ask you, what do you think about some of these names like Scramble, Scramble Blue, X0, X0 Plus?
They sound like social media platforms. Yeah.
And so, like, I would consider this era of arcade games to be the era of like kind of like mobile games in a way where they get updated regularly to keep people's attention to coming back like a mobile game. So I feel like some of these updates were literally just that. Like, oh, did you hear that that one game that you have a card with all your items just got a new update and has new skins for the holidays? So it's kind of like the reason you go into a mobile game. It's the idea of bringing these people into arcades. So let's talk about the PlayStation 4 version. The PlayStation 4 version was released on August 2018 and could have flew under the radar because Sega made no big advertisements for this, even on their Japanese website. It was a free-to-play release. It reset the whole game balance to the original arcade version to start off, so they could give you slow drip updates, which kind of made people mad when it first came out, I remember. It included maps of the later versions. It added upgrades like armor, weapons, stat boosts, chips, and skins. Introduced borders, aka pilots leveling systems, and border drops, stat boost chips for mech customization. So basically in-game currency. Gameplay modes included beginners matches and stuff like that. And it had a gacha system, of course, with paid currency and in-game lot tickets. And they even offered a 30-day premium service option, so you could pay monthly, of course. The PlayStation 4 port aimed to maintain the game's dedicated user base while making it more accessible for home users. And I guess this next one doesn't really apply to you, but while the PlayStation 4 version was Japanese exclusive, you could play it via making a Japanese PS4 account. Have you tried, did you try, because it's already down,
right?
Did you try playing Border Break on the PlayStation 4?
I didn't think to. I didn't know I could. Like I said, I mean, I didn't get into the PS4 on day one, but I did have one. And I have tried Japanese exclusive games, so I definitely have an account. But yeah, I regret not doing that, but I guess it's just not something we were talking about on the site. Otherwise, if people were like, oh, you got to try Border Break, Barry, you got to try it. Oh, well.
Yeah, I tried it. I downloaded it, and I remember just kind of being turned off about the speed, like you are. Like sometimes for some reason, when I think Sega AM2 arcade game, I'm like, I'm gonna be going fast. I didn't think barren desert landscapes with like slow moving mechs. Like that's not what I think of when I. So this game is really like different compared to every Sega AM2 game that I personally played, and I think that's something that they've done for a while. You know, like Outrigger is not something I would think of them when I think of Sega AM2.
Didn't they make that game where like the battleships were girls?
Yeah, it's like Cannoli or something. It's like it's like based on like a little girl anime thing. You know how they have that weird thing in Japan with like the kids look like toddlers and you're like, why? Okay.
The kids look like toddlers and then the adults look like kids, and then
and then there's no adults.
Look like adults.
Adults, the only ones is the old men. So I remember playing it, just not being that into it, and I was like, I had to just say this isn't for me, and I couldn't really figure it out because it was in Japanese, and maybe it would have been easier now that we have like Google Lens. Have you tried that before?
I haven't.
So you could use Google Lens and just put translate whatever's on the camera, and you could like go on a Sega Saturn Japanese menu and like look up all the options so you could know what you're clicking on.
I've tried that with something, but I did the photo version. I didn't just like do a live video. That's helpful.
Yeah, so I do that sometimes when I'm playing a Japanese game and I need to get it into some sort of menu. Didn't have it back then. It would have been great. I would have played this game a lot more. From what I played, like 10 matches, it was too slow for me. So I'm wondering what other people out there that are watching this, if you played it, did you like it, and did you keep up with the updates? Because that's something I kind of wish I did, where like I saw what customizable stuff came out. I kind of like that stuff. So so let's look at the first trailer released 15 whole years ago for the debut of Border Break. It kind of gives you a kind of a feel of what the game was going for, and for some reason this trailer is a widescreen video, but they shrunk it into another widescreen video for some reason. So very cool. Let's play it. It has a unique Sega logo in the beginning. The splatter of paint.
Ooh.
So it's a rock and roll game.
Network Robot Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Mechanical Panda. I did not get any of this from the gameplay we were watching.
No, they're definitely making it look more action and extreme. But it's still kind of slow, I would say, the mechs moving.
Yeah.
It looks... I wish that when you cut people open, it would splatter paint like that. And they had like this kind of art style where it's like shadow. Like it looks way more artistic in this video than it does when you actually play it.
The designs are very forgettable.
Right.
Nothing jumps out to me. Like I look at these. I mean, we've been talking about this for a half hour or more, and
right.
I have nothing has hooked me. I haven't seen any design where I'm like, oh yeah, that's Border Break.
I like not like Virtual-On, which they had like unique color schemes and mech designs where I could see a mech and go, oh yeah, that's from Virtual-On.
Yeah, and like I even remember some of their names.
Right.
Like they had funny names, like what's it, Temjin?
Right. So this gives you more of a look. It has a green. What do you think about this green? The logo is, I guess, is fine, but like this green color, because when you do design, right, they tell you that this color green is off-putting.
I don't know. It just it doesn't really scream like addictive robot video game to me. It looks like charging station.
Right.
Yeah. It I don't know. It's not a great logo. It's not great designs. And you know, we watched that gameplay video, and I just kept seeing that illustration of that guy doing this with his arm behind his head.
Right.
Constantly. Right. And even when you get to the results screen, other people playing with that character have him too. So it's like 5th place, that guy. 10th place, that guy. Your character, that guy. And it's like, oh, he has something to talk to us about. And it's like the same image. It's just so... It feels very budget. Like a very budget title.
And what do you think about the sub name Sega Network Robot Wars?
I guess
I thought it would have been cool if they did some sort of like television type mech show where you're in an arena and you're playing the game, and the announcers are like a little over the top, kind of like what's that, Blood Splatter Arena or whatever on Genesis, or what's it called?
Right.
TV something. I forgot what it's called. But yeah, they have a game like that where you're like a gladiator and you're in a game, and the idea is that you're people are watching you. I mean,
this game must have been good because it was around for so long. But
I was going to say the future and legacy of the franchise. So yeah, you're right. It was massively successful. It had an impressive 14-year run, and this is including the PS4 version. Sega announced the closure of the Border Break servers that were scheduled for September 9th, 2023. That was when the PS4 shut down. The arcade had its final update in 2019. So it's exactly 14 years. The game's legacy includes grossing over $100 million by 2012, so a couple of years as an arcade exclusive. Influencing mecha design and I don't know how they did this because it's so generic, but a unique blend of Western shooter mechanics and Japanese mech aesthetics. Demonstrating the potential for long-term success in the arcade market, which is true because a lot of people were dropping out of the arcade market, and I feel like this kind of extended Sega selling their arcade spots for at least a decade. Obviously now that's not true. Sega sold everything that they own. Demonstrating, inspiring various media adaptations, including novels, mangas, and art books. And this is true. You can look them up online. There's a lot of them. While the online servers were shut down, the main story remains playable offline, ensuring aspects of Border Break will continue to be accessible to fans. So if you want to try a 10v10 shooting team-based action game with robots and bots, this is I guess you could play it. I'm assuming that they're talking about the arcade version. I don't know if you could download the PS4 version.
Huh, interesting. So is the PS4 one still playable and downloadable or no?
That's what I'm wondering right now. Let's see. Okay, it says right here on Reddit that it's just matchmaking is disabled, and that you need maybe a PS Plus. I don't think you do because it's free. I don't think you need Plus to play it, but it doesn't matter. There's no online servers anymore, so
right.
Outside of that, I do know there's a lot of this is Sega's first like esports game, so there's a ton of like footage out there of people actually playing this game live in tournaments, which is crazy. I used to actually see them a little bit, like fast forward through them to see what the whole hype was about, and it was it's weird that is this a game you never hear about? That's why. That's all I was like wondering. That it has such a big, unique fan base in Japan. It's one of those games that you never really think about. It's like Phantasy Star Online 2. Like, I don't even know that many Sega fans that played it regularly, but for some reason it's successful enough to get a whole remake of the game from the ground up. And obviously people are playing it, and this is one of those games that has like finds a niche audience in Japan that's like really into mechs, and it becomes this mega success for Sega in the arcades at least. Obviously, if it was more successful as time went on, we would have had more ports and maybe a Western release. But what are your closing thoughts on Border Break? And you know what? I forgot to post this for Sega Memories, by the way. I totally didn't even post
I don't
the thing.
think... Would anyone have memories of a game that never
Probably
made it?
not. And I have to apologize for the boys because I have to read their memory, or at least something they heard about this game. So
yeah.
Sadly, we have no memories of this, but I'll let you do the closing thoughts.
I mean, I can't really speak for them, but I'm sure they probably have similar sentiment to me. They might have heard about it, seeing the AM2 logo there, wished it came to the West. Maybe they tried it out on the PS4, maybe they didn't, but it just, it's one of those games that was, I think, had a bigger legacy in Japan for AM2 than some of the games we over here probably still talk about from the team. And it's fun and interesting to talk about these games on here. I know we sometimes get flack where we're like, oh, you need to play the game, but in this case we kind of can't,
Right.
And so it's kind of that AM2 game that got away, and nowadays you can't really go back and experience it for what it is. So
maybe if there's like an arcade with the 10v10 in Japan, you'll be able to experience it with other people, but I have a feeling that this game's like probably not going to be an easy game to find in the wild. I also think this is probably one of those games that, in my opinion, this is like the last big Sega AM2 game that they worked from the ground up by themselves as a new IP that was a massive success. Obviously, Virtua Fighter 5, you never know, it might come back. We said, I think there was an end date. I forgot when it was. It's maybe like 10 years ago that they did a final update for the arcade of Virtua Fighter 5, and we're gonna have a new Virtua Fighter 5 re-release next year, so or at least an update. So never say never.
True.
Never say never. Maybe they'll make Border Break 2, make it more. I hope if they do it, they go a little crazy on the art style, make it flashy, make it loud, because I feel like at this time when this game was being developed, we were all used to like brown kind of Gears of War type shooters, and that's what it's trying to mimic to try to appeal to the West, which is funny because it didn't even come out here. And so check out some of the tournaments online for Border Break. Check out some of the art for it. I think they did some cool trailers and art for it that's more interesting than the actual game itself, gameplay wise. a simple team-based arcade shooter. So thank you guys for joining us on this Sega Talk. We'll catch you guys next time. And what are we going to be talking about next time, Barry?
Next time we are going to be covering Blue Stinger.
Wow.
So
a launch title, a Sega Dreamcast launch title, horror game influenced by Resident Evil. All this and more next time on Sega Talk. Bye.
Bye.